If you've been wanting to try a foldable smartphone for a while, but just don't have the $2,000 to spend on one, the new Hero 10 from Blackview might just have come at the perfect time, as it's now the cheapest foldable on the market, launching at a diabolical $393 USD. And so, if the world of foldables is getting progressively more enticing for you, but you just don't want to hand over an arm and a leg, is the Hero 10 your best bet? And how does it compare with the foldables we've already come to know and love? Let's find out, starting with the design. And by the way, before we start, I'd just like to give a massive thank you to Blackview for sending me this Hero 10 to review. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I love whenever I can try out super unique, quirky phones like this one. So in terms of design, when open, it's quite a bit taller than a normal smartphone, so it's a bit unwieldy to reach the far top corners with one thumb, and it's not the thinnest or lightest out there either, being 8.1mm thick and weighing 198 grams. So there is a bit of heft to it, but kind of in a good way. It sits well planted in the hand. Now the hinge feels pretty robust. You do get a nice, solid, satisfying clasp when shutting the phone, and if you have the phone half open, it doesn't flop about. So nice quality hinge on here, and when you shut the phone, the word Blackview appears on the back of the hinge, so you'll always know what phone you have when you go to pick it up. I also like how it shuts completely flat. The Z Flip 4 and Fold 4 from both 2022 have this gap when folded. Samsung did fix it with the most current generations, but it's good to see that the Hero 10 folds completely flat, despite being significantly cheaper. Now looks wise, we get a giant immersive hole punch display on the front with super thin bezels from top to bottom, but I'll get onto the display itself in just a bit. But first, let's take a look at the mini display on the back. The rear displays on these foldables are inspired by the ones that they used to have way back when on the original brick phones, and you can quickly see the time if you tap it, and then if you unlock the phone with the fingerprint scanner on the side, you can then see your notifications, the date, battery level, weather, and any music playing, but you can also scroll to the end and press a button to open the camera if you want to take a quick selfie or check that your hair is doing what you want it to. Super nifty feature that actually makes a lot of sense. Now the sides are slightly curved, which makes them pretty comfy to hold. They're not as curved as say iPhones before the 12 series, so you're getting a good blend of a flat finish and comfort in the hand. Plus the soft rubber texture on the back gives you a lot more grip and comfort than say an aluminium or glass back. At the top right of the sides, there's the power button and volume rocker. Not the best positioning, especially if you have small hands. It can be a bit of a stretch to press them, especially that volume rocker, so yeah, definitely would be easier to use if they were a bit lower towards the middle. Now the power button also doubles as a fingerprint scanner, and to be honest, it's really not the best fingerprint scanner. A lot of the time it does take more than one try for your print to be recognized. You might have to try a couple of different angles, which can be quite annoying, but once it does work, it unlocks straight away. And to make up for it, the Hero 10 also has face unlock, which works absolutely instantaneously, so I definitely recommend using that over the fingerprint scanner. On the bottom, we get the dual SIM tray, USB-C charging port, and speaker, and the speakers on here aren't really anything spectacular. They are quite tinny and at loud volumes a bit distorted, but they still do the job, not a big deal. And plus, there's also another speaker at the top for a stereo setup to make things that little bit more immersive. Now coming back to the display on the front, we get a 6.9-inch nice AMOLED display with a resolution of 1080 by 2560, along with a pixel density of 403 pixels per inch. This panel is an absolute pleasure to view, super crispy details with no visible pixels, and being AMOLED, super vibrant colors with deep true blacks. Really good to see that they didn't cheap out with LCD despite being a budget foldable. Now the display may be tall and slightly unwieldy, but it's extremely immersive, and landscape games go super well since there's more space in the middle between your two thumbs, so you can actually see what you're doing instead of your hands taking up all the room. Although, being a foldable, there is of course a very feelable dent in the middle at the point where the phone folds over. You'll always be going over it with your finger, especially when scrolling through Instagram or an article where your finger is always crossing over the middle. But the upside is that it's never visible when you're looking straight at the phone, and it doesn't create any distortion to whatever is on the screen. I mean, every foldable has a dent in the middle, it's just something you get used to over time, so absolutely not a fault of the phone itself. Also, whether you're outdoors in the glaring sun or tucked under your covers bedrotting, you'll be able to see what you're doing no matter the conditions with a peak brightness of 1300 nits. I was able to watch YouTube videos outdoors on a cloudy day just fine with only a quarter of brightness, which is pretty darn impressive. Although being a quote-unquote budget foldable, they sort of did cheap out with the refresh rate. It's 60 Hz and not 90 or 120 Hz like on other phones at around this price. Those refresh rates make every swipe and every scroll just that much more buttery smooth and fluid looking, but considering that 60 Hz is what we've been using for years and years and we're all pretty used to it, it's far from the absolute worst thing they could have cheaped out on. And unless you're a tech head, it's not a a big deal in any way. It's still a very high-end display despite being budget oriented, and whether you're mad about your tech specs or not, it looks done good. Super easy on the eyes with its crispiness and vibrant colors. But moving back to the back of the Hero 10, we have our dual camera setup, a bedazzling 108 megapixel main sensor, 8 megapixel ultra wide, and a 32 megapixel selfie camera. Now the main sensor only uses all 108 megapixels if you have that mode turned on to save storage. Normally they're just 12 megapixels, and the photos on just normal 12 megapixel mode certainly do get the job done. I'll touch on the 108 megapixel mode in just a minute. In good outdoor lighting, as you can see, these shots are absolutely nothing short of perfectly decent, and if you're not fussed about the finer details, it's a very solid camera. But in those indoor situations, or if you're shooting at dusk, there certainly is a lot more grain and blur, and just in general, it's really no match for the photos you'd get on a more flagship oriented foldable, or even just a standard phone. There absolutely is a noticeable difference with dynamic range, vibrance of colors, and there's ever so slightly less detail. Absolutely do not let this put you off though. I'm not saying the main lens is bad, it does do a pretty good job in the right lighting, but the whole point of this phone is for people to get into the foldable market at the lowest price point possible, and for that to happen, it simply wouldn't have been feasible to put something out of a NASA telescope lab on here. But Blackview still gave us a decent main sensor, one in which the small drops in certain aspects won't bother the vast majority of people. But at the same time, if you consider yourself something of a mobile photographer, you'll definitely want to consider something like the Z Flip 5 or the Oppo Find N2, something with a bit of a higher end setup. But for the average non-tech spec nerd looking to get a foldable smartphone without burning a hole in their pocket, it's absolutely solid. But despite the certain drawbacks in quality, they still gave us a 108 megapixel shooter on this $739 foldable phone. 108 megapixels has 9 times the resolution as just normal 12 megapixels. You can just keep zooming and there's detail for yonks. For example, you can see each individual hair in photos of pets, or faraway text that would otherwise be blurred from pixelation. It's so handy for those shots where you don't care about the storage it takes up, but you just want as much detail as possible of whatever you're shooting. And at this price point, it's absolutely insane that Blackview managed to squeeze this into a phone that's already foldable and $739. Absolutely diabolical. Now the ultra-wide lens is pretty much the same kind of deal in terms of quality as the main lens, although with it being able to zoom out to 0.6 times, it's super convenient to capture a wider field of view without having to take a step back. Although being just 8 megapixels, there is quite a big drop in quality from the main lens. If you zoom in, there is definitely visible pixelation, but that's only noticeable if you zoom in. Just looking at the photo normally, it's absolutely fine. Same goes for the selfie camera, although being 32 megapixels, it's quite high resolution, so you can zoom in and see all of your blackheads and pimples in crisp detail. Dynamic range though isn't the best, and if you're outdoors, your face can get blocked out by the contrast in light, but if the light is well balanced, it absolutely can take decent selfies with good color and plenty of detail. I feel like the colors are a little on the warm side, but apart from that, it's a darn decent selfie camera. Now video can be recorded on the Hero 10 in up to 1440p at 30 frames per second, and honestly, it's actually pretty darn good on here. Yes, the dynamic range isn't perfect, but I honestly think the colors look a lot better when taking video than photos, and the stabilization does the job well. So while it still might not be flagship quality video, I'd say it's still pretty darn decent for this price point for capturing memories. So yeah, just to reiterate once more, this is in no way a bad camera setup. For this price, you are getting a lot packed in here considering the focus of this phone is a foldable that doesn't break the bank, not having the most state-of-the-art camera setup. And with stuff like the 108 megapixel sensor, they absolutely did not run us dry on bells and whistles either. So while things like colors, dynamic range, and overall crispiness is definitely a night and day difference from flagship phones, it is still a darn capable setup at this price point. Does the job solidly for the 90% of people who just want to take photos that look decent and don't really care about the finer details. And if you are someone who's picky about camera specs, well, there's a world of more expensive foldables out there. But whether you're picky about tech specs or not, you probably do care about your phone's performance, how quickly it opens and loads apps, and whether it can handle games. Well, on the Blackview Hero 10, we get the MediaTek Helio G99 chipset along with an insane 12GB of RAM. These are some darn high-end internals. The Helio G99 absolutely smashes through 99% of mobile activity. Swiping around the interface and opening apps is mainly a breeze, as is stuff like sending emails, like games, and doom scrolling on TikTok. Occasionally there is a tiny bit of lag or a few seconds delay here and there, but that stuff goes away pretty quickly and it's not a big deal whatsoever. It is such a buttery user experience all in all. Power intensive games also run really well. I tested out Pixel Gun 3D and a few heavy Roblox games, and there was quite a bit of lag initially when joining the Roblox games, but that quickly went away and the games ran pretty flawlessly from there. So yeah, whether you're running tons of stuff in the background or just doing the usual everyday stuff, that G99 chipset will carry it all effortlessly. So, you've got a foldable phone with some pretty darn decent specs for $393. But just how long can you plan to use this phone for? Well, in terms of software updates, Blackview claims it'll get 3 years of Android updates from Android 14 now to Android 16 in around 2027, which is around how long many people plan to keep their phones for anyways, but outdated versions of Android tend to be usable and stable for a lot longer than iOS versions on iPhones, so I'd say you could probably even keep it for a few years after that without any trouble. I mean, there's plenty of new budget smartphones and even smart TVs still being released today on Android versions that are a few generations behind, so even once the Hero 10 loses software support, you should be able to use it for a few more years after that without any trouble. But something that can give you a lot of trouble in a smartphone is a bad battery life. So just how long does the Hero 10 last on a charge? Well, you'll be glad to know that it's extremely solid, boasting a chunky 4000 mAh cell. And honestly, you'll definitely get multiple days on this with light use, and with moderate to heavy use, it'll easily get you through the day with charge to spare. Of course, heavy games are the thing that'll drain it the fastest, but even after I played Pixel Gun 3D on here for around an hour, the battery drain was only something like 10 to 15%. And when I was watching YouTube videos and scrolling social media, it absolutely sipped its charge. It's a very efficient phone. So yeah, whether you're just someone who uses your phone for social media, texting, calling, browsing the web, or you like your heavy games, you'll never have to stress about being away from a charger. And so with everything about the Blackview Hero 10 covered, it's pretty safe to say that this is a pretty darn good deal for $393 USD, although this will be slightly more when the promotion ends. Blackview says around the $500 mark, but even then, you're still paying half of what they want for the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 5, and you're also getting some pretty respectable specs. Of course, it does have its shortcomings. I mean, the cameras are decent, but not what you'd call high-end, and of course, you're not getting, say, Samsung's AI features, but the Hero 10 is still a bargain-packed deal, and if you're looking into the foldable market but don't have the funds for the foldable market, well, maybe now you do. And this phone may very well be the catalyst for the prices of foldables to plummet in the next couple of years and make their super quirky and useful features available to everyone. And I'd like to once again thank Blackview for this incredible opportunity to review the Hero 10, and if you're looking to buy this phone, head to my link in the description below to pick one of these up for yourself and start living that foldable life without that foldable life bank account drain. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, please make sure you drop me a like and subscribe to TechSpree to find out what tech of yesterday is worth it in the present day. Also, if you'd like to have a stalk, my Instagram is at tech_spree and my Twitter is at techspree1. Thank you so much for watching. This is Tom with TechSpree, and I'll see you as always next time.